Keeping the train rolling, looking at some prospects that might be there for the San Francisco 49ers with the 11th pick in round 1 of the 2025 NFL Draft. Offensive tackle Will Campbell, edge rusher James Pearce out of Tennessee, and what's going on with this defensive coordinator search. We've got updates, Saleh, the Jags, Balky, Pete Carroll, and more names to throw at you. Coming up right now.
You are Locked On 49ers, your daily San Francisco 49ers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to Locked On 49ers. Brian Peacock and Eric Crocker at BD Peacock at Crocky209. Thanks, everybody, for making us your first listen on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. See all the everydayers out there, seeing some of you already jumping in with us live here, doing a little live Wednesday nighter. Just for fun here on YouTube. It'll be up first thing for you in the morning on the audio podcast. Make sure you subscribe everywhere you listen to your podcast. Welcome to the new listeners as well. Come hang out with us. Subscribe so you can go on this journey through the off seasons. We build our draft board for the San Francisco 49ers, a couple of big-time prospects to add to that board in Will Campbell and James Pearce, and some more nuggets about what's going on with the 49ers defensive coordinator search and what's going on with the Jaguars head coach search, which has a lot to do with what the 49ers defensive coordinator search is doing right now. Today's episode of Locked On 49ers brought to you by PrizePicks. Go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnNFL. Use code, all lowercase, LockedOnNFL to win $50 instantly when you play $5. Let's start at LSU. Let's start at Will Campbell, offensive tackle prospect. Some people calling a guard, Croc.
Are they?
Yeah, they are. And I'll tell you why in a little bit. But first, we're going to go to the tape with Will Campbell, listed 6'6", 323. And you would say, well, that sounds like prototype offensive tackle. Why would people be talking about him as a guard, right? And we'll get to that. And for a lot of these prospects, I think for both of the guys we're going to talk about today, the combine is going to be important, not as much because of how they athletically test, but I think for the measurements and how these guys measure up, what they weigh, what their arm length is, right? It's always big for those edge guys and offensive tackles in the NFL draft. And Will Campbell's a guy that he was a 4-star recruit, and he started right away. You don't go into the SEC, LSU, as a freshman and start, Croc. This dude's got 3 seasons of starting experience under his belt. And when you put it on the tape, you see it. He's a clean prospect. He's really good. He's the best offensive lineman so far I've watched for the 2025 NFL draft.
Well, I've only watched 2 guys so far, Mimbo and now Will Campbell. And watching Will Campbell, it only took a second to say, oh, 49ers, are you going to have to trade up to get this guy? And if so, you need to do it. That's why it shocked me so much when you said, well, some people are looking at him as a guard. And it's got to be just pure measurements, because when you watch him, everything you kind of want your tackle to be, I think it was that. He showed a really good anchor. He showed good feet. He plays a little high from the start. Like if you watch him, it's like, do you think you're like 6'10" or something? But he's out there on the edge. I saw guys try to give him a little bit of speed to get around the corner. He handled the speed well. He handled speed to power very well. One guy was able to kind of work outside, come back underneath, come clean. Quarterback got the ball off, but got hit. But aside from that, it was a lot of winning, and not just winning in the passing game. There was a lot of winning in the run game as well. Watching him really just be able to anchor down and stand this guy up. I watched him get to the next level. He looked very comfortable doing that and doing those things on the move. The interesting thing to me was hearing from some of our listeners how much the NFL and the draft guys like Mimbu, and that they're kind of putting him over guys like Will Campbell. But to me, again, I've only watched 2 guys. It was a stark difference in how I felt about the 2 guys, and it jumped off the film right away for me.
So the big thing with Will Campbell is apparently he's going to measure with short arms. Even though he doesn't look like it and he doesn't necessarily play like it, you see it maybe at times. He's almost too, and I love what you said about the anchor. He's clearly powerful in the lower half. He's got great bend in his lower half where he sits down on the chair, right? He bends at the knees, not at the waist. He's not a lunger at all. He can really get into his seat and handle power, and he's a powerful guy. And I think potentially why some people don't love Will Campbell is he's not necessarily a highlight player. He's not knocking guys out left and right or anything like that. He's not really burying guys left and right. He's just rock solid. And I think that experience shows. I think he came into college after 4 years of starting in high school, and then he started 7 straight years at offensive tackle, right? And it shows. He's a technician out there, and kind of playing like a man amongst boys in some cases, even though he hasn't been in college for that long. And he's not like an older prospect or anything like that. And so I think technique, he's a really calm player. He's smooth out there. He knows exactly what he's doing. He looks like a pro. And I think that's why the tape looks so good to me for Will Campbell. He looks like a plug and play player. He's going to come in and start for whatever team, whether that be a guard or an offensive tackle. He looks like a tackle to me, but maybe he does come in with, well below the line. Because some teams, if
he's at like 32, like right, even 33-inch arms, like that'll be an issue for some, because they want that 34 inches, right?
34 is what they want. Less than 34, some teams will look at you sideways. If you're less than 33, you're going straight to guard. And we saw that with Peter Skoronski, who was the best offensive lineman in the draft a couple of years ago. Teams they're like, no, you're sorry, dude, you're a guard. You're the best offensive lineman. We'll draft you in the top half of the first round still. I think he went 13, 14 overall, something like that. But you're a guard. And he went day 1 left guard for the Tennessee Titans. And that's where he stays. So it's Peter Skoronski guard. If he's 32.5-inch arms, sorry, you have to play guard. And so I think teams might know that about him. And maybe he's already measured up at other points. And they're like, yeah, he's got short arms. I don't see the problem on tape with his short arms. I think maybe occasionally there are times, but that's only because I knew about it and I'm looking for it. If I wasn't looking for it, I wouldn't have seen a guy. I saw a guy who looks tall. He looks 6'6". I would have expected that he had 33, 34-inch arms when I'm watching the tape. He doesn't bury guys.
That was something that didn't jump out to me. I didn't know his measurements. And a lot of times I like to, and I talked about this with, defensive backs, receivers, but offensive linemen, defensive linemen, pretty much every prospect. I want their film to tell me what they are as opposed to measurements. I would like to guess like what their speed. Let's say DK Metcalf. I remember when DK Metcalf was coming out, and we didn't know where he was going to run from the 40-yard dash at this time. But I watched this one play, and I immediately texted my homies, and I said, I think this big ass receiver from Ole Miss is going to run like 4.3. And they're like, no way. And I'm like, look what he does to the defensive back. Look at the defensive back, how he's trying to close the space. And you run faster looking straight ahead than you do back, and DK's looking back the whole time, and the corner is not making up any ground. I think this big dude is really fast. But the film told me that. Like, I didn't need a 40-yard dash to tell me that. So, when you watch a lineman like Will Campbell, I want the film to tell me, like, hey, the arm length looks like it's an issue. Hey, maybe he's a guard because of this. But that was actually shocking to me that you said, oh, they're seeing him as a guard, because all I saw was a guy that was very sound as an offensive tackle, a left tackle at that.
Do you remember a couple of weeks ago or years ago, we were talking about this guy off the air? The Los Angeles Chargers in 2021 drafted, and I keep blanking on his name. They drafted Slater, Rashawn Slater. They drafted him 13 overall. I get similar vibes. He was a short arm guy. Remember, and teams were like, I don't know. And he ended up going to 13 because of it. Some people thought he's even better than Penei Sewell. He was more of a technician, more of a plug and play left tackle. Sewell ended up being a right tackle in the NFL. And he had 33 exactly inch arms. And some teams were like, kind of out on that. But the Chargers were okay with it. He's been fine. He's been a really good left tackle in the NFL. I think similar as far as when you talk about what his draft grades are going to be for teams, what kind of player he is. Can he get to that 33-inch arm mark? I'm fine with him at left tackle in that case. And look, when it comes to the 49ers, whoever they draft is probably going to start at left guard anyway. I mean, at least that's the way I look at it. That's my plan. Maybe you think, okay, he's going to replace Colton McKivitz at right tackle. I think the plan would be you play him at left guard, with the plan to be whoever you pick at number 11, if you pick an offensive tackle, they play, you have a soft landing, you're a plug and play player, you go right in at left guard, and then you end up kicking out to left tackle when Trent Williams is done. I think that would be the plan with my guy. Maybe they find someone they want to play guard. Maybe they bring Aaron Banks back. Maybe they sign a free agent, and then you have him come in and compete with Colton McKivitz and play right tackle instead. And God forbid Trent Williams retires this offseason, because that was a draft day surprise with Joe Staley that we didn't know about a few years ago too. So I guess that is still a possibility, and that probably raises the heat a little bit on finding an offensive tackle at the top of the draft. But as of now, he's kind of the guy I've seen where I would be cool with at pick number 11. And in the chat, some people are probably not super excited about Will Campbell, and I think it's hard because unless it's a generational tackle talent, it is hard to get excited about an offensive line at times that high in the draft. I would lean, if there's a tie, to the defensive lineman over the offensive lineman, just because I think positional value and what you could get in a game-wrecking defensive lineman is more valuable than a rock-solid offensive lineman. But I'm with you, Croc. I really liked what I saw from Will Campbell. As far as the offensive lineman I've seen, Will Campbell is my favorite. And you hear him talk, first of all, he's got a thick Louisiana accent. He's like a team captain type. First of all, he started as a freshman, starting 3 years at LSU. He has the patch. He doesn't wear number 7 as an offensive lineman, but LSU has that number 7 patch for like I forget what it is, best player on the team. Every college team has that idea. He's got a patch that has number 7 on it, but he can't wear number 7 as an offensive lineman. So he's that guy for LSU. You hear him talk, and he is like, coaches are going to love him. They're going to fall in love with him. He's all about ball. He knows what he's doing. He'll talk ball. He'll talk technique. And I think he's one of those guys where he'll be a 10-year starter in the NFL. Question is,
Gold helmet type guy.
Right. He could be one of those guys for the San Francisco 49ers. So if they're 11, I wouldn't be shocked at all if Will Campbell ends up being the pick. The next guy.
You talked about not seeing like the highlight plays that you were really driving guys into the ground and whatnot. I think we'll start to see less and less of that. Like I've dove into the air raid offense, and as you're starting to see more spread stuff, there's these more vertical set pass drops. Even in the run game, you're in the 2-point stance as opposed to having your hand in the ground. So I think we'll be going kind of further and further away from seeing guys just really overpower guys. You're more zone stuff where you're just trying to wall guys off as opposed to really push guys back and drive them into the ground. So there may be a reason as to why we see less and less of guys just really bulldozing guys. But he did have a couple of those clips in some of the games I watched.
Will Campbell, to me, the short answer is rock solid, plug and play, starting. I think tackle, unless his arms are below the line, and then maybe he's a guard. That probably will hurt his draft stock a little bit. Still clean first rounder. Best offensive lineman I've watched so far. Seen in the chat, people want our thoughts on Kelvin Banks Jr. out of Texas. He's going to be the next offensive lineman we do very soon here as we break down these prospects. But next, we're going to talk about a prospect who's less plug and play. I think I understand who he is. Who can he be is probably the bigger question. We're talking edge rusher James Pearce out of the University of Tennessee. Next. This episode of Locked On 49ers brought to you by Talkspace. Therapy is a game changer. It can be helpful to manage stress, improve sleep, communicate more effectively, but finding the right therapist and fitting sessions into a busy schedule can be a challenge. That's where Talkspace comes in. Talkspace, the leading virtual therapy provider, makes getting the help you need easy, accessible, and affordable. With Talkspace, signing up is simple. You can match with a licensed therapist who fits your needs, usually within 48 hours. It's convenient. You can have sessions from the comfort of your home and even message your therapist between appointments. Plus, Talkspace is covered by many insurance plans, and for most insured members, there's $0 copay. It's never been easier to prioritize mental health. As a listener of this podcast, you'll get $80 off your first month with Talkspace when you go to Talkspace.com/LockedOnNFL and enter promo code SPACE80, like Jerry Rice 80, SPACE80 to match with a licensed therapist today. Go to Talkspace.com/LockedOnNFL and enter promo code SPACE80 to get $80 off your first month and show your support for the show at the same time. That's Talkspace.com/LockedOnNFL, promo code SPACE80. All right, next up is number 27, lean, mean, James Pearce, edge rusher out of the University of Tennessee, mostly used as a stand-up rusher. 6'5", 242 are the measurements there. And immediately the first name that pops into my head when I watched James Pearce, and he's one of the prospects I've watched the most and started watching earlier in the prospect because way back when the 49ers were, when we did our first mock draft Monday and the 49ers were going to pick like 17 overall, I was looking for pass rushers, man. And I saw James Pearce and I was like, okay, this guy's interesting. And immediately you see his height and his lean frame. And I thought Brian Burns right away. And I've always wanted the Niners to have a Brian Burns opposite of Nick Bosa on that 49ers defensive front. Could James Pearce, Croc, be that guy for the San Francisco 49ers?
Brian Burns did not jump off the screen to me when watching him. And I watched a lot of Brian Burns. Everybody remember that was Brian Burns, Nick Bosa, Josh Allen. You know, you're watching all these different edge rushers. And I remember watching Brian Burns and thinking, out of all those guys, he has the best pass rush repertoire. Like just the way he was able to get after the quarterback, how athletic he was in space. You saw the speed to power, you saw the strength, you saw the pass rush plan, which was shocking to me why he dropped to like pick 17 or whatever it was. Like Brian Burns, to me, he was kind of a special pass rusher and maybe need to get a little bit better at certain areas, but he was terrific. Looked at long lane type guy coming out of Florida State. When I watched Pearce, one, I didn't know he was that big. So again, I do like to find out live, and you guys can kind of see my reaction. Like, wow, 6'5", 242. Okay, it's a long, lengthy guy, and it makes certain things make a little bit more sense. But
he looks about 215. He looks like a wide receiver playing defense, right?
I don't know if it's the number, right? Like maybe if you put him in a different number, would he look like he, was a little bit bigger? But I saw the athleticism. Like he's definitely a really good athlete. I think he leans a little too much on the speed element to his game to get to quarterbacks. And at the NFL level, unless you're Von Miller and you're turning the corner, dipping to where your shoulders dang near touching the ground, and you're able to pop up and sack the quarterback, there has to be a power element to it. Now, the power element in his game did show up in the run game. Like when he was stout with setting the edge, he can disengage, and then he had the athleticism to chase guys down. So I was impressed with that. But as a pure pass rusher, I would have liked to see what are your counter moves. He flashed some nice spins where he was able to, press upfield shoulders, spin back underneath, put some pressure on the quarterback immediately. I think that's the Brian Burns stuff that you're seeing there, showing that good athleticism. But, speed to power, where is that? Because the NFL level, it's just harder to consistently just beat guys around the edge. There has to be a power element, and I didn't quite see that in his pass rush repertoire. But is that something that you were able to see in games that you watched?
No, and that's why I said what he could be. And you're watching James Pearce, and especially if you're talking as high as the 11th pick, is like, oh, there's just something missing about his overall game that would be a little bit tough. And I don't know if the 49ers would see him as that player for the style they play currently. And there were times where he would put his hand in the ground and rush as just like a pure defensive end. Part of the problem is too, is that Tennessee defense. There's so many guys, and they have like hockey lines of guys coming in and out of the game. And so he doesn't play like a full-time amount of reps as you would expect for someone who's going to be like a no doubt first round type of a prospect in the NFL draft, because they filter in so many guys, keeps him fresh, and his win rates are really high. But will his win rates as a speed rusher drop in the NFL just because of the way he wins? Probably. Will they drop in the NFL because he's asked to play more snaps? Probably. And then you start to worry about, okay, and like you said, you did see him with, it's not a physicality problem, setting the edge against the run. It may be, maybe a little light in the pants at times, but there's not a lot of power element to his rush, and you got to have some power element to your rush. And he's such a thin guy, and he's lean in the hips, and it's just there's enough missing to where I would feel as fun as he could be and as good as he could be. And if you said in 5 years he was the best rusher from this draft, I'll know how that goes. But there's still something that needs to be added to his game. And first of all, he's got to show up and actually be 6'5", 242, because I have some questions about that, because he looks really thin, but he is fast and he's got speed. Is it more about technique? Is it more about getting a little bit stronger to add more of that speed to power? I don't know, but he's up to the challenge physically. He's a physical player, and he'll set the edge, even though he's a pretty lean guy. And clearly he wins a lot. His pass rush win rate is one of the highest in this class. So there's a lot to like, and you're banking on more development for him to be a complete player. But I mean, we were saying the same thing about like TJ Watt coming out, right? TJ Watt went in the late 20s, and he was a bulked up linebacker, but he was a maniac. And I think there is some elements of motor, and like you could see, like if you talk me into James Pearce, it's probably because this guy's wired this way. He's got a motor. He's not going to stop. He's added this much weight every single year. He's going to keep adding weight. He's going to be 255 when he's done. He's going to be Donnell Hunter. He's going to be, maybe not TJ Watt, but he's going to be a dude in the NFL. I would believe you, but work still needs to be done. He's not quite there. Have some reservations as high as pick 11, but I think he's a clear first rounder and he's got a lot of juice.
There were a lot of teams that passed on TJ Watt. The 49ers include that, right? I mean, Solomon Thomas went number 3 overall, and TJ Watt went 27, 28 to Pittsburgh. The Cowboys took Taco Charlton before TJ, and that was like the pick before.
There might be some Taco Charltons in this class too, Croc, because we're going to have to do cluster busters on these speed rushers. Jalen Walker, Mike Green are guys upcoming that we're going to do. We got to do a cluster buster on more of the powerful rushers that don't have quite the win rate as far as pass rushing in college. Are any of those the next Taco Charlton with Stewart and Michael Williams and Scarton? So there's a lot of interesting prospects in this class. And I think a lot of guys are going to have to cluster bust in the end between, the 10 to 20 range in this class. It could be all offensive linemen in different shapes and sizes of defensive linemen.
Are we going to get to quarterbacks at all? Greg Pinelli, shout out to my dog. I kind of cheated on Greg Pinelli today too, by the way. I brought it like this other quarterback trainer to work with my quarterback, and it wasn't Greg. Wow. He's not happy about that.
Wow. Does he wear a golf shirt as clean as Greg Pinelli does? That I've seen on Greg Pinelli's Instagram. Okay.
Yeah, Greg Pinelli. I mean, it's like, Greg, are you going to get me some of this? He gets cuts and he has all these different. I see commercials of him and stuff. And it's like, come on, Greg, I can't get any golf shirts. But he says Jackson Dart, 3rd, 4th round, book it.
I'm with it. Late 3rd, comp 3rd. The comp picks came out. Let's talk comp picks on tomorrow's episode. The projected comp picks, not the official comp picks. What about one of those late 3rd round picks? The Niners screw that up every single year anyway. How about spending that one on a quarterback? Jackson Dart at pick 101. I'm all about it.
He's talented.
James Pearce, for you, pick 11 right now. You feeling like that might be too high? It sounds like you don't think he is a good fit for the 49ers, or maybe you're a little bit out on him that high in the draft.
I like Will Campbell more at or around pick 11. Like, even if you had to trade up a few spots to get to Will Campbell, I like him more than drafting Pearce at 11.
All right.
Now, if you told me you were able to trade back, collect like another 1st round pick and a 2nd round pick, and you get him at pick 617, then I'd feel more comfortable. But if we're talking about 11 or higher, Will Campbell just seemed like someone who is an immediate fit to what the 49ers like and how they want their guys to move. And he has size, and that's something that I think even for the 49ers, to have a tall guy, that we'll see with the arm length and everything, but he moved well. And he has weight to him, but he doesn't look like this heavy set guy. Whereas when we were talking about Mimbu, it was, he looks like a guard. Like that was literally my first note.
Yeah.
Looks like a guard.
Yeah.
And I didn't get that with Campbell, but he probably is somebody who initially can play guard and then slide out to tackle when either McKivitz leaves or Trent Williams retires.
All right. We're stacking our board for the 49ers here. Right now, leader in the clubhouse, I think Will Campbell. I think when we get the Peacock consensus right now of the 4 deep dives we've done on prospects, Will Campbell. We got a lot more work to do though, and we're going to stack this thing as we get closer to April's NFL draft for not only pick 11, pick 43 as well. Who knows? I don't know if we'll have a top 75 listed out, but we'll talk a lot about the 3rd rounders potentially. It should be a really good player there in the top 75 in round 3 as well for the San Francisco 49ers. Next, let's talk defensive coordinator Robert Saleh, a step closer to the Jaguars head coach job. Balky out in Jacksonville. What the heck are they even doing? Is Pete Carroll a real possibility at DC for the San Francisco 49ers? All that and more next. This episode of Locked On 49ers sponsored by FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. From the first whistle to the final drive, FanDuel makes the NFL playoffs even more exciting. Right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $300 in bonus bets. If you win your first bet, that's $300 to keep the action going at FanDuel for championship weekend, for the big game a couple weeks later. Tons of NFL draft props as well. The FanDuel app is easy to navigate, and the variety of bets keeps every game exciting. Plus, when you win, you get paid instantly. No waiting around for your winnings, whether you're betting on your favorite team or just looking to add some extra cash and excitement to the playoffs. FanDuel has you covered. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today and get started with $300 in bonus bets. That's FanDuel.com. Make this playoff season unforgettable with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. What the hell are the Jacksonville Jaguars doing? First, they got to figure out their thing so the Niners can figure out their thing. And they're realizing nobody wants to coach the team because Trent Baalke's there. So they finally, 3 weeks too late, fired Trent Baalke as GM, Croc. And so now, another 49ers old friend from the front office, Ethan Waugh, who spent time under Baalke with the 49ers, also spent time with the current regime with Kyle, John, and then defensive coordinator Robert Saleh is now the interim GM, help leading the charge to find a new regime to be in charge of the Jacksonville Jaguars. Croc, that to me screams more likely even that Robert Saleh becomes the head coach of the Jacksonville Jaguars, because now there's a personal connection. And almost every hire around the NFL you see, there is some personal connection. Ben Johnson is like, man, okay, he must really love Caleb Williams, goes with the Chicago Bears. No, he's got a personal connection with Ryan Poles, the GM from their days at Boston College. There's always a connection there. Josh McDaniels going back with Vrabel now for the New England Patriots. Kyle Shanahan's always had problems hiring coaches that he doesn't know personally and already had that personal connection with. The one time he didn't, it was Steve Wilkes, and he was gone after 1 year. So always look for personal connections when you're trying to figure out who a team might hire. And Liam Cohen, this is after Liam Cohen said, yeah, I'm good. I'm going to stay as offensive coordinator for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers rather than go be the head coach of the Jacksonville Jaguars. And so I don't know if that was a reaction of nobody wanted to go there because of Baalke, so they fired him, or because the Ethan Waugh thing with Robert Saleh potentially, or another coach saying, okay, I'll go there with this guy, but not that guy. I don't know what to think about the Jaguars. I don't know what the hell they're doing, but I do feel like it's even more likely that Robert Saleh is the head coach of the Jaguars now, which means he won't be head coach or won't be defensive coordinator of the San Francisco 49ers, Croc, in that case.
It feels a little bit like there's no plan in Jacksonville. And maybe all along the plan was to hear how every coaching candidate hates Baalke and doesn't want him around. And then it's like, all right, now we can justify firing him. But just the way he weaseled his way into that situation in general, that seemed a little odd. You know, he came in kind of a certain role, and then he kind of worked his way to being the GM. I think he got it really good with the owner, and you know, they couldn't figure it out. He couldn't make the right hires. He didn't have to make the right hires with the San Francisco 49ers before really kind of making that whole thing a disaster, firing coaches after, 1 year. Even let's say Chip Kelly, who was awesome in the championship game the other night. Wow, great job with his play calling. But what did you expect? I think they won 5 games. And they had one of the worst rosters in 49er history. And you give them that 1 year, and then you fire them after that. Now, maybe you're hearing all the kind of things behind the scenes, but it almost felt like Baalke was really scapegoating other guys, using them as a scapegoat for his poor ability to be a general manager. And it's continued in Jacksonville, just making poor decision after poor decision, and maybe being a little too hands-on with certain things, but it clearly isn't working. And I think he was scaring off a lot of the high-profile candidates, because most teams, you would think, or coaches, especially a Will Johnson from Detroit, wouldn't you think, hey, if there's anybody that would really like the thought of coaching Trevor Lawrence, who's a very talented quarterback, we haven't quite seen him be that consistent, good quarterback at the NFL level, but hey, man, I can get him right. I'm the guy for that job. But it's like, no, I'm going to turn that down to go coach the Chicago Bears because I don't like this GM. I think they had no choice but to fire Baalke.
They should have done it a long time ago. I was shocked when they fired Peterson and not Baalke. Like, how many times do you get to pick a new head coach if you're Trent Baalke? It's pretty unbelievable. So that's what's going on in Jacksonville. We'll see what happens there. Does the firing of Baalke help lure Liam Cohen back? Does Cohen want to try to maybe get a different job still? We'll see what happens there. Are there still some coaches to be interviewed that are still playing football right now. And the same conversation goes for the San Francisco 49ers. If Saleh's gone, is it Brandon Staley? Is that it? Are the Niners cool with that? Pete Carroll is the name that Tim Kawakami dropped today. He said, Croc, that the 49ers have at least had internal discussions about Pete Carroll. And I hope they had internal discussions about a lot of guys, right? That's like not scouting a player in the draft. It's like, oh, hey, the 49ers have scouted Will Campbell. Well, yeah, I hope they scout everybody. You know, it doesn't mean they like him or going to hire him or going to draft him or whatever. But so it's kind of a vague report. And you know what was hilarious is maybe my favorite Kawakami tweet of all time is he replied to somebody about that today. And someone was asking about, you know, the 49ers process and how could they only have interviewed 3 guys for the defensive coordinator job. And basically he's like, well, a lot more could be happening that we don't know about yet. And those things that you don't know about could be really smart things, but they could also be really stupid things. And he was kind of vague, not necessarily saying the 49ers, but he's like, just because it didn't get reported doesn't mean that other things aren't happening. But he also said, just because things are happening, might be happening, that doesn't mean they're smart things, but they could be smart things. I don't know. It'd be funny. I thought that was a funny tweet by Kawakami. So basically that is to say, who knows? They might be doing other stuff, and it might be even bad stuff. It might be great stuff that they're doing behind the scenes. So I don't know. You kind of just throw your hands in the air.
I think the 12s would hate the thought of the 49ers even entertaining bringing in Pete Carroll and seeing him in the 49ers. But he coached the 49ers back in the day, though, didn't he?
Yeah, University of Pacific originally. So he's been an OG from the area, right? He's a California dude. And
so he's born in San Francisco.
Yes.
And he was he was the 49ers defensive coordinator 1995 and 1996.
95, 96. So he was 95 still Seifert?
I believe it
Had
was
to be, right?
Seifert.
Yeah, because they were just coming off the Super Bowl, and they must have lost some coaches after the Super Bowl.
Mariucci
was later.
96, 97?
98? Maybe
98.
Seifert had just won the Super Bowl, so he would have still been around for 95, 96. But I think the 49ers lost a lot of other coaches because, I mean, Niners were losing coaches left and right back in the day. You know, Shanahan came through, and Reed was around for a while, and the Walrus was around for a while, and they all got jobs elsewhere.
So Pete Carroll not only played at the University of Pacific in Stockton, California, let's go, but he also coached at UOP for 4 years. Now, here's the interesting thing. That was 1973 to 1976. Pete Carroll is 73 years old. Like, don't you just want to go and like live the rest of the life?
That's what I'm saying. He should be enjoying retirement. He must be just straight up married to the game. And he still has more energy than a lot of guys in his 70s. I don't know how realistic Pete Carroll is. The 49ers do need some energy on that side of the ball. And that's one of the things that I'm really excited about if Robert Saleh does come back to the 49ers, because they're missing that. And there we go. Holmgren and Ray Rhodes. Thank you. Ray Rhodes is the name I was thinking of. Defensive coordinator of the 49ers lost. So Pete Carroll came in after that. Pete loves ball. He does, man. I don't know if that's the right hire. I don't know what the 49ers are doing. I got a feeling they really are okay with Brandon Staley. But at the same time, why didn't they hire him last year? Staley brings a different scheme if he's allowed to run his own scheme. He came up under Vic Fangio in Denver, then went to LA, had one awesome defense, and he was a fast riser, and then all of a sudden he's got a head coach job. Then he had some mediocre defenses. It has some good defenses early, I think, and then it kind of just fell apart towards the end. Raiders put up 60 points on Staley the last year there. I don't know what to think about Staley. I think he's a smart guy, but if basically with the 49ers defensive scheme, I'm at this point. Okay, bring back Saleh. He was around when they customized this scheme. He's got energy. You know he's good. Bring in Saleh if you can. If you can't bring in Saleh, you need to get the best coordinator that's out there. I don't care what the scheme is, and I'm okay with seeing a little bit more of an odd front or a little bit more of a multiple front. And look, it's going to be 4 down linemen when you're rushing, so it's not going to be a problem for Nick Bosa to run anybody's scheme out there. He's scheme proof. And if that's Staley, if that's another coach from the outside, but look, a lot of these veteran coaches have already got jobs elsewhere anyway. So You might start talking Eberflus. You might start talking about some of the coaches that are still in the playoffs. I really don't know. Weird processes for both the 49ers and the Jaguars right now.
Eberflus, that's a good name. And I think, again, people are going to look at the head coach version of him, kind of like they do with Staley, but you look at the head coach version. But let's look at the version of Eberflus that got him hired as a head coach. And that's a good football mind right there.
Gus Bradley's out there. He's a little too strict with the cover 3. And like, that's the Pete thing too. It's like, Pete, man, you're 73. You're still running this thing that was awesome 15 years ago, Legion of Boom. But, I don't know, man. I think Pete Carroll would be fun in a really interesting way. And I think Kyle Shanahan wants a veteran coordinator because he doesn't want any more growing pains on that side of the ball, which is probably why he wants Saleh above all else. But, man, Mike Zimmer is going to stay in Dallas, I'm pretty sure. From what I hear, the Dallas Cowboys are just going to give Brian Schottenheimer, who's the offensive coordinator, the head coach job. And then Zimmer would stay. So basically, they're just like, McCarthy's out, and they just kept the rest of the staff. Which is weird.
They're going to pull a 49er.
What if
Swanson's out, but we're actually going to keep you around, and we're just going to bring in Brandon Staley, who is already here.
Another team? Like, what are these teams doing? It's very strange processes going on in the NFL. These are supposed to be the best of the best. These are massive organizations, and it seems like, I don't know.
Feels like no plan.
But again, we don't know everything. Croc could be smart, could be dumb. We don't know everything that's going on. Oh, man. I think that's a great place to end it. Thanks, everybody, for joining us on this impromptu live Wednesday evening episode. First thing in your audio feeds Thursday morning. Appreciate all the everydayers out there. Welcome to the new listeners. Make sure you all are subscribed on YouTube or anywhere you are listening to this podcast. Croc and I back tomorrow. Let us know what prospects you want us to hit next right here. Locked On 49ers.